And we are live. Ready?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. On 8-4, right? There we go. Welcome to another episode of Marketing School. I'm Eric Sue.
And I'm Neil Patel.
And today we are going to talk about how to run an amazing virtual event. But Neil, let's maybe we'll give some context to everyone first as to what our amazing virtual event was. First, it's a growth accelerator virtual event. We had, let's give some people some color. What do we have? We had amazing speakers. We had great networking. It was one-on-one networking. We had speed networking, and we had group networking, and we had chat to connect everyone afterwards. But we did this over the course of 4 weeks. Each week it was about 3 hours or so. And we even did hot seats where we helped people with their business, and people were helping each other. But we aren't able to do live right now, so we decided to do a virtual event, and we wanted to see how we would do with it. So it was a new challenge for us. And Neil, you want to kind of add some more color to that before we talk about how to do an amazing event?
Sure. And I know some of you guys are thinking like, is virtual events really worth it? Should you end up doing it? If you do it right, it's definitely fun. Eric and I had a blast doing it, not just as a host, but we learned a lot. We got to interact with a lot of people. And there's ways to set it up where it almost is like a real conference when you're interacting in person as well. And if you do that, it ends up becoming a really fun experience.
Yeah. So a couple key things. I think just to let everyone know, we don't have this. We didn't get it perfect. I still think we're improving at this. Neil and I are always striving to do the best that we can with these live or virtual events.
The first two, we made a lot more mistakes, and then the third and fourth one really got good.
Yeah, I think our ratings was like a 7 on the first one, then it improved to like an 8, and then it went up to a 9, and it stayed at a 9 for the final one. But yeah, let's talk about it. So a couple of things that we learned. Maybe we should talk about the mistakes we made first. I think some of the key mistakes we made was not vetting the tech platform enough, meaning, so we use a new platform called Hopin, that's Hopin, before we moved back to Zoom, but that's where I can talk about that later. But what we learned is that you can't just have people show up. You can't just say these people speak at these events and they're experienced enough. You have to test every single person, which I think Neil and I, we've always been on the other side where it's like, oh God, we have to go to this 10-minute test again. And then it's like, you have to do it every single time. But there's a reason for it, because you don't want the tech to be all weird. And our first two speakers, the very first two, they had tech issues. We had echoes, people couldn't join in, they didn't know how to share their screen. So we just had a lot of issues. And if we had tested with every single speaker, we would have had a much smoother experience.
We would have a much smoother experience. The big thing that I ended up learning from this is you don't just want to use a software that makes it seem like a glorified webinar. That was the biggest mistake that I think we made, and we got that in feedback as well. If you do it through things like Zoom and the way it was set up, and Eric, you should probably talk a little bit more about this because you did more than I did on that, and especially we were able to make it seem like an event where you're networking, learning from others, almost like an in-person event versus something that was a glorified webinar that would be done over a computer.
Yeah, we got really good feedback from one of our the group members, Ricardo. He was making it a key point to just say, hey, look, we used Hopin initially because I was the week before I spoke at a virtual event that had 900 people or so. And it had some interesting features, which we can talk about, but we ended up switching back to Zoom meetings. So not Zoom webinar. Like right now we're on Zoom webinar, and you can see we have a couple of attendees in here. They aren't able to we can't see their faces. We can't really interact. So instead, what we did is we did a Zoom meeting. We did it Brady Bunch style, so we can see everyone's face, and the presenter would speak, and then people would unmute themselves, and then they would basically ask their questions, and then it would be an interactive thing instead of someone reading the text and answering it. The human connection, the bonding, there's more of that. Granted, we're not in person, but that went much further. And the final thing I'll add to Zoom is we ended up using breakout rooms. Breakout rooms put us into separate groups of 5 where we would talk about, SEO or different books or different prompts. That allowed for even closer bonding. So those two were, we're glad that we switched back to Zoom for those.
Yeah, we tested out everything from doing speed networking, kind of like speed dating, But out of everything that we did, the best feedback probably would come from A, the speakers, of course, but B, what really helped was the breakout rooms. Because the breakout rooms is like people are getting in person together, and then they're giving advice on any specific topic and helping each other out. And when you keep the breakout rooms really small, it's super effective. The moment the breakout rooms have like 16, 20 people, 30 people, it's not that effective.
Yeah, interesting enough, Neil, I don't know if you saw the survey, but so here's an interesting thing. Not interesting. You should be doing this. You should be serving each and every time you do this. So the questions we ask are, how do you think Neil did as a speaker? How do you think Eric did as a speaker? How do you think the one-on-one networking was? How do you think the group was? And then what else would you add? The key question for me is always, what would you do to make it better? And for each section too, because then you get the real feedback. It's not just the stars. And again, Neil and I, we're not really big on super positive feedback. I think it's the negative stuff that helps us make the thing better. So that part's important. And then what we realized too at the end was I added this other question. I don't know if you saw it, but I said, hey, how valuable did you find the one-on-one networking? 9.8 out of 10. So we're going to bring that back. What we're going to end up doing is we're going to use Zoom and we're going to combine it with Hopin. So once we finish next time that we finish the event, we're going to say, hey guys, everything's done here. We're going to switch back to one-on-one networking. You can do it. You can stay in there as long as you want, but it's 5-minute sessions and you just get kicked out. You meet the next person, the next person, the next person. I personally found that really valuable. I don't know about you.
I did as well, but overall it was really useful. The problem that I ended up seeing with switching is if the other person doesn't have their tech right, you're stuck with someone that you can't hear, you can't see, you can't talk to, and you're stuck. That was the biggest issue I had with it.
Yeah. Did I lose you? Oh, you're still there. Okay,
No,
cool.
no.
Anyway, guys, I think we're probably going to talk a little more about the virtual event, but if you want to learn about our virtual event, go to marketingschool.io/live. That's LIVE. And in the application, there's actually a section on the virtual section. So you can indicate that you would like to, attend the virtual event. And then there's also a section for the live event too. It's really up to you. But again, marketingschool.io/live. That's LIVE. And we will see you tomorrow. All right, that's done. Done. All right, here we go. Welcome to another episode of Marketing School. I'm Eric Su.
And I'm Neil Patel.
And today we're going to talk about 7 new ways to grow your SEO traffic. So I guess I'll start first because today I had a webinar on new ways to do SEO. So the first way to grow your SEO traffic, new way to grow your SEO traffic would be to think about on SERP SEO. What does that mean exactly? So SERP is the search engine result page. And as you know, SEO now is getting more difficult because the search engine result pages are so dynamic. Sometimes you might have apps, you might have a knowledge box, you might have featured snippets, you might have site links. There's a lot of changes happening. So what you got to do from your end, we've talked about FAQ schema before in the past. We've talked about all these different tactics. Those all fall on the search engine result page. You got to think about how you can do on SERP SEO. Part of what you can do using, software, or you can do it on your own, but you can use our software if you want, ClickFlow. You can test your titles and meta description. And that is basically one element of on SERP SEO. There's a lot more that goes into that, but I just wanted to give you one piece.
Number 2 is create new formats of content. So you don't have to just do text-based content. You've already seen that Google ranks videos, but did you know Google also ranks podcasts? So they're now crawling podcasts, transcribing them and indexing them and driving traffic to them as well. So don't just create text-based content, considering creating all the new different types of media formats that people are really leveraging these days, such as video, audio, podcasting. Push it out there. Make sure you include keywords with whatever you're talking about. Do your research. And what you'll find is some of that content can also start ranking, because for many listings, they're pushing up just podcast results or they're pushing up just video results. So it's a way to grab more search traffic and not necessarily compete with all the other people who already rank.
Number 3, I kind of alluded to this a little earlier, but if you Google Matthew Woodward FAQ schema, you'll find a way to get FAQ schema set up. And in some cases, your click-through rate actually might go higher. This is kind of continuing to follow the theme of on SERP SEO.
Number 4, buy websites. Buy websites not for their backlinks, buy them for their brand and their existing traffic and their existing SEO traffic. Merge it into your site. Make sure you delete the duplicate content or merge the duplicate content together. And what I mean by duplicate is not word for word content, but if I have an article on SEO and someone else has an article on SEO and they both talk about a beginner's guide to SEO, you don't want to have 2 pages on the beginner's guide to SEO. You would want to merge them together. And when you do that, what you'll find is you'll pick up more search traffic because you'll rank for more keywords.
All right, number 5. So even though we talk about it, I don't think a lot of people do this enough. Think about how you can build your own widget or how you can build your own software, where those will basically, because those have, to me, they're a little more defensible than making a new ebook or a new infographic, for example. So an example of this, Neil and I talked about this website when COVID initially hit. A lot of in the United States, a lot of layoffs started happening. So these layoff trackers started going up. I was actually looking at one of the layoff trackers recently, 1,600 referring domains going to it. That's a lot of links. So if you can build something that's helpful, that's genuinely helpful to people, that's a very linkable asset. This is it's an evergreen SEO tactic, but nobody has ever talked about. They talk about linkable assets, but they don't talk too much about using a product to help with branding or a product to build links.
Yeah. Another thing that you can end up doing is look at popular tools on the internet that are in your space, add them to your website. You can find a lot like at Code Canyon and stuff like that. What you'll find is they tend to create a lot of brand queries. The more brand queries you have, the easier it is to rank on Google. So yes, Eric talked about linkable assets, but if you can also get tools that just create more brand queries, what you'll find is your rankings for all your pages go up, even if you're not getting a ton of links.
All right, number 7, kind of similar, building on the example I gave from number 5, where you lead with a product. It could be a widget as well, but let's use Neil's Uber Suggest as an example. He has a lot of data, a lot of clickstream data, and basically, what the great thing about that is that he can make really data loaded posts that nobody else can do. So I remember recently I just read something from about how everything you know about click-through rate has changed, but they were pulling proprietary data that they have. If you have your own product, you're able to kind of glean these own insights, and you can produce content that stands out on its own, which you have a linkable asset that's helping you produce more linkable assets with your content. So anyway, that is it for today. That's 7. And if you want to learn about so we do have a boot camp that we're putting together, marketingschool.io/bootcamp. The application's open right now. Once we go through the applications, then we will officially set a start date for that. That is a cohort that's going to be run by me initially, and then we'll see how it goes from there. But yeah, feel free to check that out if you're looking to kind of upskill. marketingschool.io/bootcamp to learn more, and we will see you tomorrow. All right, ready?
One more, yeah, let's do it.
Welcome to another episode of Marketing School. I'm Eric Su.
And I'm Neil Patel.
And today we are going to talk about why Twitter is a severely underrated platform. Did I tell you what happened with Twitter recently? What I did recently?
What'd you do?
So I started running ads for I spent like $10 a day or $15 a day. And what happened was one of our big clients, I think everyone knows the name, they saw it, and that led to a upsell conversation, and it led to much deeper conversations. And not only that, I'm running this ad right now. It's basically to a blog post, and more and more people are seeing it. And I'm having people with like blue check marks that are reputable investors or VCs or founders. They're like following me, or they're liking it. I'm like, oh, this is really good for branding. For $10, $15 a day, it's done so much for me right now. And not only that,
for $10 a day.
What's that?
What are you getting growth wise for $10 a day?
Growth wise, I'm not getting. I don't think I'm getting. It's negligible. I think it's I'm getting impressions. The most important thing is I'm getting impressions on these posts. The reach. My goal with these is the reach. And so you shouldn't be aiming for, like, at least for me, I'm not aiming for conversions or anything like that. I think if you're running $10 a day or maybe even $50 to $100, these types of platforms, the reason I started doing this was because I started seeing other people running these ads. Andrew Wilkinson, for example, from Tiny Capital, he just keeps running the same ads over and over, $50 a day. But I remember him. And that, we talk about the rule of 14, the rule of 7, whatever. I just think Twitter from an ads perspective is very underrated. But from a learning perspective, I've also talked about how, to me, it's the most important social network because I just learned so much more from it than other social networks.
So how much are you, so when you're using it, you're spending $10 a day, how many impressions are you getting?
Yeah, I mean, let me just open it right now. So while we do that, why do you think it's an underrated platform?
So Twitter has a lot of smart, high net worth people on there, but it's not the sexy social network. It's not like Instagram, it's not like Facebook, it's not like YouTube, but it's a place where you find the likes of like the Elon Musk of the world and the Bill Gates of the world who will constantly communicate. And they like doing it themselves. It's not like having someone who works for them posting. They themselves like going on Twitter and tweeting and conversing with others. For that reason, I think it's powerful because although they may not have the reach, you can get access to really wealthy and influential people on Twitter in a much more easier way than you can on Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn or any other social network.
Yep. I have the numbers. So I guess I'm spending a little more now. I guess we ramped up the budget a little bit. So in the last 7 days, so it looks like about $95 spent. I think we ramped up from $10 a day. So $670 in spend, 122,000 impressions. It's not the greatest CPM, cost per thousand impressions, but to Neil's point, he kind of hit the nail on the head. The people that you're reaching are high net worth, smart individuals that like to pontificate, that like to act like, they want to show their wisdom. So that's why Twitter is really underrated. It depends on what you're selling to.
Well, so out of the impressions, how many clicks did you get to your site?
Let's see. Well, let me pull that up. Give me 1 second. Keep going though, while I pull that up.
But in general, like there's a lot of channels like Twitter, Reddit, Pinterest that a lot of people don't talk about, Snapchat. They all have different types of audiences, but these are underrated platforms. And why we think they're underrated platforms, Twitter specifically, but the others as well, is there's not a lot of competition for advertising. Facebook and Google or Instagram, they're all saturated. Google would also be YouTube, Facebook would also be Instagram, but they're all saturated. And if you look at some of the other channels, they're much more affordable. LinkedIn, that is a thriving social network, but from an ad standpoint, it is quite expensive because a lot of companies use it for sales and recruiting, and people spend a lot of money on job posts. But other than that, I found that the other networks are much, much more affordable.
Yeah. So here's the thing. It's not making it. So here's the thing. It shows how noob I am at this platform. The second thing is it's actually not showing me the clicks. It's just because I'm focused on impressions, cost per result, it's just giving me a CPM. So I'm not seeing a clicks right now on it. But I can tell you,
got 100 and something thousand impressions.
yeah. So 100 something impressions, 1,000 impressions. It's not the best CPM. It's around $5 or so. But I can tell you, based on the upsell, and then also the people that are engaging with me, the people that are following me as well, it's worth its weight in gold. So use it. Not just, you don't have to use it for the ad side of things, but for me personally, once you know how to calibrate it and you're following the smart people, these people, or the people that you think are smart, that should help shape your worldview. That to me is already, that's the real value. And then if you're going to run Twitter ads, that's additional value.
Yep.
All right. So that is it for today, everyone. But if you want to learn about our virtual event, you can go to marketingschool.io/live. That's LIVE. Great networking, great speakers, and just fill out an application. And then if it looks like it's a good fit, we'll reach out and we will see you tomorrow. All right, let's get to some questions. So, Bill, we're not going to pull anybody in today. We're just going to keep going. Let's see. Thank you, Bill. All three. Okay, so let's ask this one. What are some of the best practices for blogging? I can only do 1 to 2 videos per week. How should I post them to my site, keeping SEO in mind?
What's the best what for blogging?
What are some of the best practices for blogging? I can only do 1 to 2 videos per week. How should I post them to my site, keeping SEO in mind? So
I wouldn't even worry about posting to your site. If you're doing video, I would just straight up push them out on all the social sites. I have a blog post on YouTube SEO that I follow, and I do really well on YouTube SEO. It's neilpatel.com/blog/YouTube-SEO. Just like straight up jack what I'm doing and copy it.
There you go. Parker Davis. By the way, Parker's the guy that reached out to me, I think in Instagram comments, and then Nick basically jumped in, and I think he maybe talked to Neil Patel Digital or Neil Patel Utah, not sure. But he said, hey, Eric and Neil, just got a job as an e-commerce account manager. Congratulations to you. It's not easy getting a job right now. Any tips you have with selling on Amazon, like with CRO and such? Helium 10, I've heard, is pretty money with it. Also, any software that you can recommend specifically to help me crush Amazon market for clients that I work with. So Parker, I'll give you one tool. It's from Greg Mercer. It's called Jungle Scout. That's a good tool for Amazon, especially if you're working with a lot of different clients. I think it's great for research. But beyond that, I'm going to pass it to you in terms of, more stuff, Neil.
I don't use a ton of Amazon tools. I know there's Jungle Scout. There's one more that does the exact same thing as Jungle Scout. I'm blanking on the name. My buddy Mike from Legion was telling me about it. But yeah, I do not know the name of it. But I do know Jungle Scout is well known. And there's a few tools on Amazon. I haven't seen any tools on Amazon that just like make the world a difference. And a lot of that's due to the data they provide, the tool providers.
Cool. I have a question here. Mike Griffin. By the way, this Mike, Mike's asking about advice on how to choose and make an equity deal with a CTO for a SaaS product. Mike, we made an episode on that one. I would recommend checking it out. Let's see, who else we got? Super Overdrive. Is it worth starting a brand new blog nowadays? For those who haven't started one yet, I would recommend taking a look at Backlinko or Brian Dean. He spoke at our virtual event a couple weeks ago, and he literally came into the SEO space, super competitive, started a brand new blog. He basically decided to write really in-depth content, and that's how he stands out. So if you can follow his method of the skyscraper technique, you should be good. You want to add anything, Neil?
Yeah, it's not really too late. But look at what media you're naturally better at creating, whether it's text, video, audio, and stick with that first. I think the biggest opportunity right now is audio, then video, and then text. Even though I think video is bigger than audio, it's just video is more saturated.
Cool. Let's see. I'm going to answer. Let's get this question from Joan. We have a lot of questions today. So thanks guys for the questions. We got questions from Twitch. One guy says he's powerful. We got people from YouTube, Elia from LinkedIn, Kyle from LinkedIn. And then Joan says, what are 2 ways for bloggers, specifically travel and lifestyle bloggers, to make a boatload of money in a short amount of time?
What's a way to make a boatload of money in a short amount of time? There usually isn't any.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. It's what I'm good at. I don't know about you, Neil. I'm good at slow and steady wins the race. Whenever I try something fast, it never works.
Sadly, I'm the same way. I wish it wasn't that way though, right? Like I wish it was, give me more as quick as possible. And
this is coming from 2 people that wanted to move really fast in the very beginning of our careers, right? But it just doesn't work.
No, sadly it doesn't. But like, I really wish that there was a fast route. And it's funny too, because every time I try doing things a quick way, they just never work out in the long run. And I waste more time, and it actually causes me to make less money in the long run.
Yep.
It's just like a distraction, right? Because usually those things aren't long term. If you find something that's quick and long term, by all means, just let me know.
Oh, for sure. Let us know. Not just let Neil know. Let me know too. So we got some good questions that I'm going to actually add as potential topics. So, the third-party cookies being phased out, experience and thoughts on connected TV. Those are topics we could potentially address. So those are really good questions. So keep them coming. And look at that. That's a really good headline. Super Overdrive, little known copywriting hacks. I'm going to take that one as well. Look at that. It's 3 ideas right there. All right, we're going to jump back into episodes, and here we go. Ready?
I'm ready.
Welcome to another episode of Marketing School. I'm Eric Su.
And I'm Neil Patel.
And today we are going to talk about something really interesting that's happening right now. So we're going to talk about the Peer 1 import transaction and what we can learn from it. But we just want to paint a little context here as to, when we're recording this is July 22nd, 2020. We're still in the midst of COVID. And so what's going on is a lot of these companies, retailers, are going bankrupt. They were already shaky, and this was basically the nail in the coffin for them. So they've had to basically liquidate. So Neil, I'm sure you've looked into this deal a little bit. What do you know about it? Can you kind of paint some light as to who's kind of spearheading this as well?
Sure. So there's a guy named Alex who co-founded a company called Zeus, and Ty Lopez, which many of you guys know about, the guy who has those Here My Car, no, Here My Garage videos with his Lamborghini and a ton of books. Ty was really smart. So Ty ended up, technically not was, he still is really smart. But, you know, a lot of people look at Ty as this guy who's just pushing a Lamborghini and there's not much more to him. What Ty and Alex decided to do was leverage their platform, leverage their audience, get a ton of investors, and go out there and go leverage their audience and go and buy these struggling e-commerce companies. The first one they did was Dress Barn. They bought it for pennies on the dollar, and now they are buying Pier One. And then from there, they turn around the companies, make them grow, cut the fat, and you got a really solid business. And someone did the hard part. They already built the audience, they already built the brand. All you have to do is just cut the fat and fix the operations.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it was initially they agreed on a $21 million deal, and then I think Pier One came back and said we want 30 million. So I think it's a $30 million deal now. But to Neil's point, it's pennies on the dollar. The work, the sweat equity that's been put in over years and years, they don't necessarily need all the retail shops anymore. You take the brand, make everything go onto e-commerce, you're good to go. So you're gonna print money with this transaction.
It's super simple, it's effective, and I wish more people, you know, thought about things that way. A lot of people want to build businesses from scratch. The hardest part is building. The easier part is growing. That's why we're marketers. Cutting fat and growing. See, if a company has like already $1 billion in revenue and they're not profitable, well, is it okay if you buy them for pennies on the dollar and you cut the fat and maybe they don't do $1 billion anymore, but they still do 100 million? Still got a really amazing business.
Right. I was listening to a stat yesterday. So Nike originally they were slating for their online revenue to be about 30% for 2023. They're already at, I think the target now is 50%. So they've already shot past that. So a lot of stuff has accelerated. Yes, we know that they're not getting a lot of offline transactions, but what this basically means, if you look at Shopify stock, a lot of stuff, e-commerce is just accelerating.
Yeah, and before this year, it was roughly 12% of online commerce transactions were done online. That number is going to explode. And sure, after there's cures for COVID and all that kind of stuff, it may end up going down a little bit, but it's still going to be way higher than where it started from.
Yeah, I think at least one of the lessons for me here is you have to look at the times. What are people used to right now? And is it just a business model tweak where you remove the retail component, the in-store component, and you just switch it to online, and boom, you're good to go? Because people are tied to the original kind of Pier One management team might be tied to, hey, we should keep the stores. You have people stuck with doing things the old way. But once you remove the emotion from it, once you just you stay objective and you think about it from a business perspective, everything changes. Anything else, Neil?
No, that's it. And the last thing I'd actually take away from Pier One, so technically I do have something, is don't judge a book by its cover. A lot of people would judge Ty Lopez and be like, this guy isn't smart. He's just doing these ads with the Lamborghini, etc. Look at him now. He bought Dress Barn, bought Pier One. He bought Franklin Mint, linen and things, and like the list is going on, and he's going on an acquisition frenzy.
Yep. There you have it. So guys, that's it for today. Feel free to text us 310-349-3785. People have started to come in, and we actually texted a bunch today or recently, just to kind of keep you up to date as to what Neil and I are working on. 310-349-3785, and we will see you tomorrow. Ready? Welcome to another episode of Marketing School. I'm Eric Sue.
And I'm Neil Patel.
And today we are going to talk about how to create massive amounts of content in 2020. So Neil, before we talk about it, why should people even think about creating massive amounts of content in 2020?
Content is king, as Bill Gates said years and years ago, and it still holds true today. Now, when Eric and I say content, we're not just saying you have to write a ton of text-based content. It could be podcasts, it could be videos, it could be just snapping pictures, it could be posting images on Instagram. Whatever it may be, you need to crank out content because it allows you to build a bigger audience, gets people to interact with you, your company, your brand. It's a great way to grow.
Yeah. So a couple of things that are practical. I think again, people's attention is so split nowadays, different social media channels, and people, I get ADD. I'm just like 1 second I'm watching Netflix, I'm using Twitter, then I'm on YouTube on my phone, even though I have YouTube on a TV. So, you know, if you want to create massive amounts of content, one thing you should think about is just look at this podcast. Right now, Neil and I, we're live, we're on video right now. This video will go onto YouTube. It'll be like I don't know, a 90-minute video, but we have so many little pieces where we might have little interactions. We'll probably have 20 to 30 micro content pieces in here that we can throw onto social media, and we can chop them up for Instagram. We can chop them up for Twitter. We can do all the things, right? And for some of you, you're probably thinking, man, that's really overwhelming. It is overwhelming, but there's a service I started using recently called Repurpose House. So I think it's repurposehouse.io, and they will chop up the stuff for you. So if you have a lot of content, they actually will help, find the timestamps for you. You pay additional fee for it. I'm just like, great, because Neil cranks out a ton of content. I crank out a ton of content. To have someone just do it for me, and then just, have someone from my social team just go and post everything, that saves massive, that's not only massive amounts of content, but it saves massive amounts of time.
Definitely. Look, at the end of the day, it's just like, if you're also not creating content too, like look what Eric and I are doing or trying to do. If you're not creating content, your competition is going to create more than you. They're going to take away your audience or win, and they're going to end up crushing you in the long run. You look at people like Gary Vee. I attribute a lot of VaynerMedia's success because of the amount of content that Gary has pushed out on social media. Doesn't matter if there was COVID and he's not getting paid to speak at conferences anymore. The guy still pushes out a lot of content, and that's super effective. If you look at that PewDiePie, no, what is it?
PewDiePie.
There you go. Tons of content. You look at that Logan Paul, Jake Paul, tons of content. Like, it doesn't matter if you're B2B, B2C. You look at Kylie Jenner, tons of content. What did that content do? It helped her create $1 billion business. Sure, there was more to it, but still, platforms are huge. What's funny is I don't understand why people who aren't well known don't want to be on Instagram, Twitter. Although I technically kind of get it because some of them want more privacy, but still, the amount of leverage that you can get from creating that audience and posting content is huge in the long run. It's the same reason when people like Gary Vaynerchuk are like, get on TikTok early. And the more you can get on TikTok, more followers you get right now. And I even see lawyers with tons of following, plastic surgeons, and people are actually getting a lot of business on channels like TikTok right now.
Yeah. And the other thing too is we created a framework for this before. It's called content sprouting. It's basically let's again use this podcast as an example. This video is a seed, and then we can sprout it into multiple pieces, maybe into different audio files for podcasts. We can sprout it into different little mini clips, video files as well, and then we can promote it using ads. We can promote it using our email list or whatever, and then you can figure out how to monetize it afterwards. But the key thing is having some type of framework you can follow. I recommend, again, using Repurpose House. You can think about content sprouting. And then if you need to organize this entire framework, you can use Airtable. They have a lot of templates on how you can basically organize your content output. Because I know for a lot of people, if you're starting to pump out, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 pieces a day, it starts to get really messy. So ideally you want to organize it. Neil, anything else?
That's it on mine.
All right, so that is it for today. Go to marketingschool.io/bootcamp if you're interested in the bootcamp we're putting together. It's a experimental cohort that I'll be leading. And look, if it goes well, great. And right now we're just taking applications, and we will let you know if you are approved or not. So that is it for today, and we will see you tomorrow. One more.
Yeah, let's do questions. One more and get to questions.
All right, keep the questions coming, guys. We're about to get to you. Welcome to another episode of Marketing School. I'm Eric Sue.
And I'm Neil Patel.
And today we're going to talk about how to create a one-man media company. So I'm going to give some examples as to what this is, so we all get an idea of what a one-man media company is. Here's a really good example. So if you take a look at Gary Vee stands out. Very easy to see. Like, he started out with Wine Library first, and then he started making a ton of content. And he eventually built out a team. But still, a lot of his brand is tied to him. He is kind of the media company, and he's been able to, pre-COVID, I think they're on track to do, close to $200 million or so in agency revenue. But he also has these other deals. He has shoe deals. He has all these other things. People find you because they like you as a person, and you get all these other opportunities that will come to you. So that's the big example. I'm going to give you a smaller example. Anthony Pompliano, he couple years ago, he didn't have any following. I think this was maybe 2016 or so, 2015. Now he has a Twitter following about 300,000 or so followers. His podcast, I think, gets about 2.5 million downloads a month. So it's a popular podcast. He has a paid newsletter as well. And he's basically learned how to basically have his audience, that's the center. And then he's learned to plug in, different offerings, whether it's paid newsletters, whether it's advertising, whether it's, the key thing here is he's the center, he is the media company, and tied to that are all the other additional products or services. And you're seeing more and more of this. A lot of writers are moving over to Substack. They're becoming the one-man media company. They don't need a lot of help. Anthony, I think he only has like one or two people helping. And so that's what it is. And we think more than ever now, or I guess during COVID right now, maybe even post-COVID, I think this is going to become more and more of a thing. It's everything. The last couple of episodes we've been talking about just is so related to having to have an audience first and then building from there.
And when we talk about one-man media companies, we're not saying that you have no staff or you have no help. In many ways, you can use tools, you can use staff, interns, even higher level executives to help you scale out your content production. But when we mean one-man media companies, we're talking about a lot of times companies that are centered around personalities like Tony Robbins, Gary Vaynerchuk. And if you look at, yes, LeBron James plays for the Los Angeles Lakers, but he's his own brand. Ronaldo is his own brand, right? Depending on what sport you like. And when you think about some of these people, it used to be back in the day, you look at these large corporations like that Coca-Cola, and you get that warm feeling when you see the Coca-Cola Panda Bear, whatever it may be. But nowadays, people prefer bonding and connecting with other individuals than they do with large-scale corporations. And I think a lot has changed in the world too, where a lot of these corporations are just making so much money. Employees don't always get compensated well. People don't love it. But that connection, that human touch, it is much more powerful than someone looking at a logo.
Yep. I mean, you think about Andreessen Horowitz, they're the venture firm. I mean, they're largely based off of a brand. It's Mark Andreessen and then Ben Horowitz. But key thing here is that they've actually written a couple of things on how they're trying to invest into these one-man media companies or these influencers now, because they know that these people can, on their whim, they can create product lines. For example, Kylie Jenner's got the brand. She can just, boom, here's a product line. Or I'm Kanye, all of a sudden, boom, Yeezys, right? So when you have influence, you're able to do a lot more, and you have a defensible moat. And I think this is why we talk about why in the last episode, you got to create massive amounts of content, because what is not commoditized is your brand, is who you are. And if you're not out there kind of making it apparent that, hey, you're alive and see me world, then someone else is going to take that attention and you're going to be screwed. We actually, Neil, do you remember last week? So some people were just kind of, one member in the group was he's been in Forbes India on the cover of it. He's reluctant to talk about it.
Inc. Yeah, he was on Inc. And then it was funny. At first he was shy. And then he's just like, okay, well, maybe I should talk about it. But yeah, as Eric mentioned, he wasn't just in Inc. magazine. He was on the cover of Inc. and he just never cared to tell anyone. He was a little bit shy about it.
Yeah. So I think the key takeaway, at least for me here, is yes, we talk about creating content, but here's the why as to why you need to create content, because it's defensible and you don't need to worry about, yes, a downturn sucks. Okay. But you're going to be protected against a downturn, and you're going to have so many other opportunities, so many other irons in the fire that other people wouldn't be afforded the chance to, or given the chance to.
One other thing, and I know we've mentioned this on past podcasts, is if you want to be a one-man content army, build that brand, you need to care. You need to interact with people on the social web. When people leave a comment on your blog, you need to be responding to them. When people send you emails, you need to be responding to them. When people try calling you, not all the times, but as much as possible, try to respond to them. You need to really care about your community and your audience. If you don't, it won't work out.
All right. So that is it for today. Go to marketingschool.io/live. That's LIV. Speaking of community, if you are interested in our virtual event and our live event community when those are activated again, but just go there, fill out an application. If it looks like it's a good fit, we will reach out. And that is it for today. And we will see you tomorrow. All right. It's time for questions. I'm going to read one from Restream real quick. So let's see. So what's the best way to approach a business with the proposal to buy their business?
You want to take that, Eric? Because you just did a whole course on that.
I did. Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, I did do a whole course on this. So we had a speaker, a mutual friend of ours, Roland Frazier. He had a course called Epic. Really good, by the way. So if you're going to approach someone to buy a business, basically what was taught in that course is you reach out initially and you just say, hey, look, I'm interested in investing in businesses like yours. You're not saying, hey, I'm trying to buy your business, because that actually, what happens when you tell people I'm just trying to buy your business is people will, their defense mechanisms will go up like, oh, you're trying to take over my thing. But if you're saying I'm interested in investing and helping you grow your business, you want to talk about it, that's a totally different conversation. Then from there, you can talk about a majority acquisition, a minority partnership type of thing. And you can go from there. But that's one of the things I learned from that. And that tends to work out well. Response rates on that when we reach out to people now on, different projects is, much higher than before. We got Ali from Italy. Must be late for you right now. AB says it should be 1 million people here. We agree with you. Let's see what we got from Zoom. So let's see. Okay. Bill says, just starting out our Twitter account. Most of our target audience is on Twitter more than Facebook. How would you guys recommend I get started? Should I boost tweets? How do I know which ones? Should we just pay to promote tweets for followers, or just my products, paid events, and free webinars? Okay. So I guess we just talked about this. So I would say you go for the content that performs well organically. So let's say you share it on Twitter and it's already getting a lot of engagement, like tweets and likes on it. Those are the types that you want to boost. Or I would say go to your Google Analytics. If you have a blog post, look at what's performing well, and then you could promote those pieces of content. So look at what performs well and then add more signal to it.
I agree. And then and test different things out. Like when you're doing Twitter, like Eric's doing, try to push traffic through thought leadership pieces more than anything else. Because I've from what I've seen on promoted tweets or ads within Twitter, I'm more likely to click on those than I am just someone promoting a product, service, or business.
Yep.
And then go for the indirect conversion.
Farouk asks, do you think the current trend among coaches/marketers to promote a cheap webinar about a topic claiming it's heavily underpriced for what it's worth and then selling us their course in the webinar is a good way of creating a personal brand? And should I even create a course at all just because I'm gonna? I'll take this first. I'll try to rephrase it a little bit. So it sounds like if you're trying to create a personal brand from a course, I would say no, because I think marketers have made courses look pretty bad. The one example I would say is counter to that is Seth Godin's Alt MBA. I actually think he's done a really good job of that, because he dissociates his personal brand from the Alt MBA. And I believe it does over 8 figures a year, which is, it's successful. And so his ads are tied more towards not performance, but branding. It's just like, hey, this is our school. It's like, Harvard University or whatever. It's like they make it much more professional. We'll put it that way. Versus like, if you see the other course marketers running ads, they'll try everything, right? And they'll run you to the webinar. There'll be a countdown timer. There'll be exit pop-ups. So there's going to be all this stuff, and they'll drive performance, but it doesn't necessarily build the best brand. So sometimes you have to think about the balance. Like, are you aiming for performance? Because if you're aiming for performance, you turn all those things on. But if you're aiming for brand, you're going to sacrifice performance, and you are, you're going to be able to build that brand, but you got to sacrifice performance. So are you willing to do that? That's the question. So my general answer would be, if you want to try the course marketing tactics, and like the tactics we've talked about, which we've learned about from other course marketers, you're not going to be able to build a good brand that way, because it doesn't have a good feeling when you're doing all that stuff.
And think about what your goal is. So if your goal is to just build a massive brand, try to flip your company, then do whatever is long term. If it's anything that is short term but can produce more income, don't do it. If your goal is to still flip, but you need the short term income, and I've been in that situation as well, what you'll want to do is take the income once it gets to a certain point, throttle back on the aggressiveness, make less money over time, but that way you can still break even. And then as it keeps growing, you can keep throttling back and focus more on branding and less on aggressiveness, and then be totally towards the method of trying to go for longevity, kind of like what Seth Godin did.
Cool. We got George watching from Kenya. Let's see over here. AB says, when selling services to businesses, is it better to a funnel, cold calls, use emails, or social media?
Cold selling to a business or cold calling to, when you're trying to sell to a business, which one's best?
Trying to sell services to a business. So I'm assuming it's like a client
cold
services type stuff.
Yeah, but I'm assuming it's outreach, right? It's cold.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
A little bit of everything. Some people respond better to email. Some people respond better to texting. Some people respond better to phone calls. Literally, you just have to try all channels until you get a hold of them and you can convince them.
Cool. All right. Last question, and we're going to move on. Gao, I guess. Hello from New Zealand. You guys are crazy. It must be so late for you guys. So Joan,
early, not late. New Zealand.
Oh, you're right. You're right. It's got to be like 10 a.m.
10 a.m. or something. New Zealand time.
6 a.m. 7 a.m.
Let's see. 10 a.m. You're right. You know more than me.
I was a lucky guess. Joan says, what's your advice for getting back to blogging, videos, and podcasts after a month off? Should we give personal information about why we're unable to work? Should we create additional content? I wouldn't overthink it. I think if you want to talk about why you were gone, that's fine. For me personally, I would just restart and just get going again. Neil?
Same. I'm on the same boat as you.
Cool. All right. We're going to get back to the 3 more, and then we're going to answer more questions, or 4 more technically. And we're going to answer questions and we'll be on our way. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. All right. Welcome to another episode of Marketing School. I'm Eric Sue.
And I'm Neil Patel.
And today we're going to talk about if all Google SERP CTRs are created equal. So SERP, search engine result page, CTR, click-through rates. Are they created equal? What do you think, Neil?
I don't know. I haven't read the post by Systrix. They had a really interesting post.
I'll read it. Here.
No, go for it.
So by the way, if you do something like this, I think this would be an amazing post. So here's a couple key things here. I think back in the day when times were simpler, search engine result pages, the ads, they didn't blend in as how they do now. And there weren't all these other features. There weren't apps. There wasn't a knowledge graph or a knowledge box. There weren't featured snippets, like all these things, right? And so Systrix has all this data about how these different search engine result pages look. I'm just going to read a couple of things here. So for example, back in the day, we used to know that a number 1 result would probably average about a 30% click-through rate or so. And you can say that, you can say this average kind of across the board. But now, if you have other elements thrown onto the page, the click-through rate just drastically changes. So for example, if I Google Neil Patel and I find his website and there's 6 links, about us, services, he has like all these little links. He's actually going to get on average a 47% click-through rate for his first result, just because he has so much real estate. The second result only gets a 14% click-through rate. And then number 3 is only 5.6%. So one more thing I'll call out here is if you see Google ads on the front page, the number 1 result now is only 19% because it's hard for people to know the difference between an ad and an organic result now because Google has made it less apparent.
Yeah. Do you remember when they really blended it in and people revolted when they put it back?
They made it favicons, right?
Yeah.
So, but
here's the thing with click-through rates, and because we have a ton of data on click-through rates, it used to be where everyone's like, oh, the top 3 results will get 70% of the clicks. Not necessarily anymore. There's so many clicks that don't get any clicks at all. what we've seen is, especially if you're on a mobile device, and Google has a mobile first index, if you're on a mobile device, we're seeing click-through rates tank. And if it's educational based keywords, we're seeing the click-through rates go down and down because Google's just pulling out the answers and just giving it to people, like what is the weather, or what is 2 + 2. All these types of things people aren't clicking on anymore, and Google's just showing the results. And now just imagine on how many people are searching for things like how to tie a tie. How hot does my oven need to be when baking a pizza? When you're thinking about these question and answers or educational based content, the click-through rates are in the shitter from what we're seeing.
Yeah. And so I think the key thing here is we know there's a lot of different, search intent matters. We know that, whenever you have, by the way, another stat, I'm staring at the stat right now. The worst click rate is found with Google Shopping. Number one is 13.7%. Google Ads is 19%. So things are tougher. What can you do to counteract this? We've talked about on SERP SEO. So on the search engine result page, can you optimize your title, your meta description? Can you add snippets? Can you get into the featured snippet somehow? How can you optimize for those so you're getting a higher click-through rate? FAQ schema is a piece of this, but how can you entice people? How can you have the best opportunity to win the attention of people so the traffic actually hits your website? And that's one thing you can do.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, it's also a branding play too, because if you're not getting the clicks, but people are seeing your domain name, your company name in the title tag, all these things help with branding as well, and they can create a big long tail of indirect conversions from what we're seeing as well. It's just, but for that to work, you have to crank out a ton of content, which we talked about, funny enough, in a few episodes ago.
All right, so that is it for today, everyone. Make sure that you are looking into OnSERP SEO. And before we go to, well, I guess you can text us, 310-349-3785. Again, 310-349-3785. It's actually us. Give us topics, give us feedback. Let me know if you think I talk too fast. You probably do. But that is it for today, and we will see you tomorrow. Ready?
Yeah.
Welcome to another episode of Marketing School. I'm Eric Su.
And I'm Neil Patel.
And today we are going to talk about 7 little known copywriting hacks. And Neil's going to start first.
Dude, I knew you were going to have me start first too. Okay, so number 1. What's funny is most people think about copy like, oh, I want to be an amazing writer like Ogilvy. Or, oh, I wish I can have my words just flow super smoothly from just like how Frank Kern does it. So the first copy hack I have for you is you don't need to be an amazing writer. The key to converting and getting people to reading your copy and buying or becoming a lead is actually answering objections. So think about what issues someone may have when they're on your landing page or potentially buying from you and answer those objections. A good example of this is you can use SurveyMonkey, Qualaroo, Hotjar, whatever you want, Typeform to survey people on your page, find out what issues they have, and integrate those within your copy, answer their objections, because even if you suck at writing, you'll get more conversions.
All right, number 2. So when I'm writing, I like using a sentiment analysis tool. So you can just Google sentiment analysis, but put in whatever copy you have, whether it's a headline or maybe it's a longer form thing, and you can just dump it in there and it'll basically score how positive or negative your content is. And in general, if I'm trying to write an ad, I want it to be generally more positive. I don't like to induce too much fear. And yes, fear is certainly one emotion you can tap into. But in general, I try to look for positivity. So just Google sentiment analysis tool.
Yeah, the third copy hack that I have for you is it's all about showing the right copy at the right time. So for example, if you have a webinar, you may have copy that convinces people to watch your webinar. If someone doesn't attend your webinar, but they registered, you would want to email them copies about them missing the webinar and the next time they can go and watch the webinar. If they watch the webinar and didn't buy, you can have copy answering objections on why most people don't buy and the results they would get if they buy your product or service. So figure out what copy you need to put in each place to maximize your conversions and have it there. Again, it's not about how smooth you write. It's about answering objections at the right time and the right place.
All right. What is this? Number 4? Number 4 is create a swipe file. What do I mean by that? If you are scrolling through Instagram, you're scrolling through Facebook, and you actually see an ad that stops you, that is known as a pattern interrupt. So what you should do there is, if you actually like the ad and if you think you can draw some inspiration from it, save it. You can save these ads, put them into a collection, and then from there, the beauty of that is you can refer back to these ads and then you can draw inspiration without having to create something from scratch. If you see headlines that you like, put them into a swipe file. You want to create a entire swipe folder where you just like to pull inspiration from, and you don't necessarily need to try to reinvent the wheel here. You can go to swipe.co to try to pull more inspiration. They have great long form landing pages and sales letters in there. Just pull. Don't try to do everything on your own. Draw from, lean on other people, right? Stand on their shoulders, and you're going to be fine.
As Ogilvy said, and this gets into number 5, as Ogilvy said, 80 cents of the dollar is spent on the headline. So what I want you to do is come up with multiple headline variations for your copy. And you want to try to figure out which headline resonates the most with your ideal customer. You can either upload lookalike audiences or your email list onto Facebook and run ads with different headline variations and see which one gets the most clicks.
All right. Number 6 for me would be using the framework from Breakthrough Advertising. So Breakthrough Advertising, I still think it's a really great book, and you can get it for about $125 now, I think, if you Google it. And so here's the framework. The life cycle, or I guess from someone going from the top to the bottom, when people interact with you, a customer interacts with you, is they usually start at unaware, and then they become problem aware, then they become aware of a solution, then your solution, and then you can make an offer to them. So think about that, right? You can use AIDA, right? Awareness, interest, decision, action, kind of similar, but unaware, problem aware, solution aware, your solution, and then you give them an offer. That is basically how you take people from top to bottom when you're trying to actually get them to convert. And this framework actually can go in with a video, it can go in with a sales letter, it can go with a long form ad. It works really well.
Number 7, last but not least, copywriting isn't all about copy. A picture says 1,000 words. If you can use images, media to explain your message and get it across quicker, hit harder, hit more emotionally, be more factual, all through media, you're going to see your conversions go up. So when you're writing copy, think about what images can I add here that can help explain the message better? What videos can I add here that can explain the messaging better as well? It's not all about text. Images and video are super powerful, and you'll see a nice lift if used correctly. You just throw in random images like stock photography, it's just going to distract people. But if it's very relevant, you'll do well from it.
All right. So that is it for today. Go to marketingschool.io/live. That's LIVE to learn about our virtual event and our live event. We do the virtual events monthly. Amazing speakers, amazing networking, and just amazing community, because we know community is more important than ever right now, especially right now. So that is it for today, and we will see you tomorrow. All right. Ready?
Ready.
Welcome to another episode of Marketing School. I'm Eric Sue.
And I'm Neil Patel.
And today we are going to talk about how to build a brand when you are not an expert.
So a lot of people are asking us, hey, how do I build a brand? I'm just getting into this field. I'm learning a lot. And they're just like, you know what? Shall I fake it until I make it? What do I do? And you have 2 real options. The first option is you can just wait. And then once you get really good at it and you think you're qualified as a quote unquote expert, guru, whatever you want to call it, then by all means blog about it, create video content, podcasting, etc. The other option, and this is the one I would recommend, is you don't have to be an expert to build a brand. You can share your journey. You can share the mistakes you're learning. You can share the pros, the cons. And eventually, not only will you learn what to do and what not to do, your followers, or the following that you're slowly attracting, will also learn what to do and what not to do. But eventually, as you gain more and more experience over the months, over the years, you'll be then seen as an expert. You don't have to be an expert. You don't want to call yourself an expert. Just share what's working for you in that industry and what's not. Be super open. Be like an open book. Be transparent.
Cool. So I was actually just going to say something similar around document your journey in the beginning when people when you maybe feel like you're an imposter and you don't feel like you have enough to teach, you don't feel like you're good enough. I think that happens to a lot of people when they're starting out, and I think that stops them from starting. Um, it's also painful when people don't see results for the first 2 to 3 years or so. And what I would say is a good example of this is Gary Vaynerchuk. He doesn't particularly teach as much as he just, pre-COVID, he just had a camera guy following him around, and D-Rock, and he was just documenting every part of the journey, and then his team would chop things up, and that would be the source of his content. And then he would realize that he was just saying this, like, I don't have to think about all the content I need to produce because I'm just living my life. I'm being me, and he's being very authentic to himself. So in the very beginning, is there any way you can document, especially if you become really, really successful and people can see you from the very beginning, they're going to like you even more. It doesn't matter how crappy your video is, your equipment is, how bad you sound in the beginning, but people are going to appreciate the raw, authentic you. And then they're going to see your journey, and they're going to continue to follow you because they're interested in seeing your story. People, I think it was, I forgot. Dave Chappelle said this. Dave Chappelle said, people don't follow comedians because they're funny. They follow comedians because they're interesting. And so how can you be interesting? Well, you document your journey, you get stronger and stronger, you don't give up. And I feel at that point, success is given. So.
Yeah. And what you'll find is throughout your journey, you'll come through a lot of things that can help you become an expert without you realizing it. So as you get a bigger audience, you may be asked to be interviewed on other podcasts. People may want to interview you. You may end up doing speeches at conferences. All these things will help brand yourself and make you be seen as an expert, but it doesn't happen overnight. And when I look at companies like Groove HQ, a lot of people don't know them, but they documented their journey, and eventually they became super successful. Gary Vaynerchuk was on doing Wine Library TV back in the day for so many years, spitting out wine. He wasn't like, I know wine better than anyone else. He was doing a show and tell and just telling people what they feel about, wine and how it tastes. Like, I remember he was on Conan one time and he's like, yeah, this is how it tastes, like a sock with dirt in it. Try chewing it, Conan. And it was stuff like that. It wasn't Gary just trying to be an expert. He was more so just saying, this is how it is. This is how I get to know wine. This is how I relate to it. And over time, people are like, oh shit, you're an expert. You know this really well. But it wasn't because he's saying he's an expert. He's just documenting his process of tasting wine. And at the same time, other people start interviewing, asking him to speak at conference, getting to know him. And that's what really helped blow him up over the years as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you even look at Logan Paul, you look at PewDiePie, you look at Casey Neistat, a lot of them, they are just kind of, even Graham Stephan too. He's just, actually, Graham Stephan, he has a Graham Stephan show where he reacts to things. Actually, he teaches. But the other three people I talked about before, again, Casey Neistat, Logan Paul, these types of people, they're just living their lives. It's not like they're trying to go out of their way to come up with topic ideas in a lot of cases. In some cases, they are. But just think about that. I wouldn't sweat it too much, and I think success is, again, inevitable if you keep doing it. And before we go, by the way, marketingschool.io/live, that's LIVE. If you want to learn more about our virtual events, which happen monthly, great speakers, great networking, and you can fill out an application. If it looks good, we will reach out to you. And that's it for today. We will see you tomorrow. All right, guys, we have one more episode, then we're going to answer some questions, and then that will be it for today's session. Ready, Neil?
I'm ready.
Welcome to another episode of Marketing School. I'm Eric Sue.
And I'm Neil Patel.
And today we're going to talk about short-term SEO versus long-term SEO and which one is better.
So a lot of people like going out there and being like, I'm going to buy a ton of links, or I'm just going to go blitz a ton of content. There's white hat ways of doing short-term SEO too. I'm going to acquire a ton of sites and just throw and redirect it, or buy expired domain names that have links. Some of it is gray, some of it is black, some of it's white. But in general, if you're thinking short-term versus long-term, you're thinking about what could you do right now to get results right away. SEO inherently is a slow and steady game. Slow and steady does win the race. If you do a ton of stuff, Google doesn't just automatically update the algorithm and put you to the top. They slowly increase your rankings over time. And for that reason, if you try to do anything that's short-sighted and short-term, it's usually not going to give you a ROI, and it's actually going to hurt you. The only time where I've seen short-term really help is if you're a big company already with authority, you already have a lot going on. but you have some issues like on-page SEO. And when you fix those things, yes, you'll get an impact in the short run, but I also look at those as long-term tactics, because if you don't do them, it's going to hurt you in the long run as well.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it's beyond just marketing is a mindset thing, because I think early in my career I was trying all the short-term things because I wanted results very quickly. I wanted to prove myself. And I would try all the things. I would try spun articles. I would use, I forgot what it was called. There's like other tools like SE Nuke and all these weird tools, right? And like all of a sudden it's like I have like 20 new articles that just like there's like jumbled text, and it's just like it felt wrong. So usually when it feels wrong, it is wrong. I tried all these other things, link wheels, just weird stuff where I would get traffic very quickly, but the site would be slapped very fast by Google, and then the traffic would just disappear. And so when you think about from a business perspective, you look at Amazon, people are like, oh my God, they don't drive any profit. It's not a real business. And then years and years and years, analysts were like, this is not a real business. It's going to go bust. And you look at them now, billions and billions of dollars, all these other revenue streams, all these other business lines. It's because they kept reinvesting, and then because they kept thinking about the long term. They weren't thinking about short term kind of quarterly results from the stock market. You should apply that mindset into how you do marketing, because now you're not going to think about, I'm trying to get results, in the next month, the next 60 days or so, in the next 90 days. I'm trying to build for the next 10 years, the next 20 years. And when you're able to do that, you think about, okay, I'm not going to try to spin articles anymore. I'm going to be like Brian Dean. I'm going to write really long form, great content. I'm going to have a lot of data, and it's going to be the best piece out there. I'm going to promote the hell out of it. And I'm just going to treat my audience right. I'm going to respond to them. And from there, I'm going to build even more than just, the SEO audience that I have. I'm going to go omni-channel. Because at that point, you're building an asset. A brand is an asset. It's hard to build a brand on a shaky foundation, where actually, if you're trying to do things really quickly, you're not really going to have much of a foundation at all. And we see that happen from time time and again, just over and over.
Yeah, it just does not work out. Like, you have to go long run. SEO is a long-term game. Anyone who goes with the short-term game usually just ends up losing money. And what you'll find is you spin your wheels. And Eric and I were in the same boat. When we first started off, we'd be like, oh, look at this tool. It can like drive more clicks to your listing, and that'll indirectly start boosting your rankings over time. Well, like, that shit doesn't work. It's not long-term. You're wasting all this time and effort on short-term tactics. If you just spent that time and energy on things in the long run, you'd be much further along.
I think those of you that are listening right now that are trying in the midst of starting out new and you want to try the things, we're not going to be able to start to stop you. I think you're going to try them no matter what. And then I think you're going to eat some dirt, and then you're going to be like, okay, I get it. Sometimes you just have to experience it for yourself. That's fine. And those of you that are like, yeah, you've done it. You're like, okay, I get what you're saying. But here's another example of something, Neil, I don't know if you saw this yet, but there's this new, it's called GPT-3. Have you heard about it yet?
I have not.
So it's basically it's AI that will take one sentence and it will make it into a full article for you. So check this out. I'm going to share the link with you afterwards, but this one article, I was reading this entire article about what GPT-3 was, and the entire article is written by the machine. I couldn't even tell. And so afterwards, it's like the implications for that are, for when it comes to like a reporting standpoint, or when you talk about scores or news, things like that, you can easily pump out a ton of content. The difference now, I'm excited about this, but the difference now is this is a long-term play because I actually can understand it and I actually got value from it, versus the short-term play before, where a lot of these tools were just kind of switching words around, or, just, I think it was switching words around where sometimes the sentences didn't even make sense. And, that's different, right? That at that point you're trying to game it. It's a hustle. But when you think about you talking about machine learning, you talk about AI, that's a longer term play because you're actually still adding value while saving human beings time. So at that point, it becomes a different story. So it's also important to understand the nuances there. Anything else, Neil?
Nothing else on mine.
All right, so that is it for today. For those of you that are interested in our marketing school bootcamp, we have an application for that. That's marketingschool.io/bootcamp. That one is going to be an experiment that will be led by myself. And we're going to try to get people job ready. And also, besides job ready, if you do have a job, we'll try to help you grow in your job too, and just help you get better at marketing overall. marketingschool.io/bootcamp to learn more. And we will see you tomorrow. All right, we're going to answer some questions. Let's see. Marketing, just get Cambridge Analytica to help you win a European referendum. That came from Twitch. Let's see. Quick question from Todd. So lead generation for a telecommunications company focusing on service and targeting a region, in this case, Southern California. How would you deploy that and what would you do?
So lead generation targeting Southern California for a service.
Yeah.
If it's for a specific region, ads tend to be easier, and just do local ads to aggressive landing pages. I know that doesn't sound good when I say aggressive landing pages, but if you're doing ads, you want the conversion. It's either convert or get out of here.
Yep. Let's see.
And I would start off with Facebook ads and Google ads to keep it simple. I wouldn't do too much mobile. Mobile doesn't convert as well. I'm not saying mobile's bad, but start off with desktop because it's easier to convert. And then from there, eventually roll out mobile as well.
Okay, question from AB. I tried ranking for a snippet box and ended up ranking the website on page 1 instead. How did that happen? Is that a bad result?
Yeah, that's a good thing. You got on
Well,
page.
I guess if you're like number 10 is a bad result.
That's true, but if you could, if you build more links, keep fine tuning your content, continually update it, what you'll find is you can climb up higher and get that snippet box.
All right, we're going to go with 2 more questions. We got one more from Bill here. We're thinking about having a web-based tool for our visitors/teachers. How do you guys recommend small businesses find and screen developers? It would have to be built. If it's a basic tool, you can always use an Upwork. You can find some good people there. If it's a little more advanced, maybe you're going to pay more. Maybe use TopTal. They have a decent screening process. Neil, anything else?
No, yeah, go to one of the companies that'll screen them for you because you have a higher likelihood of succeeding, like a TopTal, if you have the money to spend.
Cool. Let's see. How did you, Bill's question, I think this will be the final question. So talk about breakouts. So how did you structure the breakouts? This is for our virtual event. What was a speaker present in the breakout room? So for our virtual event, we had these breakout rooms with 5 people. We put them in, we used the Zoom breakout feature. And sometimes it would be about, bring in a book that you've been reading and talk about the impact it's had on you. It could be what's the most, compelling article that you've read recently. It could be based on SEO as well. We're still playing with it. It's still very much a work in progress. So next time we're going to try like an accountability group to hold people with a leader that has like something that can hold people accountable to tasks each month. That way people are actually doing things. So we're just going to continue to experiment. And I think we're about 85% there with our virtual event. I think once we do a couple more, we'll probably be at 95%. So we're getting there. Anyway, so that is it for today, everyone. Thank you so much for joining from Twitch, LinkedIn, YouTube, from Twitter, from the webinar as well. Neil and I are very, very grateful for you. And we'll see you in like a week or 2. All right. See you guys later.
Take care.